All right, let's officially get started. Welcome, everyone. I did a little intro, but everybody that's here now, my name is Mike Kelly. I'm professor at Loyola. I teach school social work, school mental health. I edit, along with Scott Carcetti, who's here today, the schoolsocialwork.net and the School Social Work Network. I also direct a school mental health advanced practice program, which is a 15 credit, 99% online, 2-year program, which is awesome and is accepting applicants for fall. I would love for you to join and apply to that. It's 15 credits. It's fantastic, and we'd love to have you. But today, the most important thing we're going to do is to talk about how we can do the work that we train to do, that we love doing, that we value, which is to engage our young people and our families in ways that allow us to be effective in this crisis time, where my school district for my own kids just said before I started talking that we're moving to April 30th as the next deadline of when we go back to school. And for all I know, it could very well be in Illinois that we never go back to school this semester. That's certainly very possible. But no matter whether we go back before the end of the school year or not, there's some very urgent and pressing needs we're all grappling with, which are how do we deliver the best available school social work and school mental health services and teaching content we can to our young people when they are in their homes and we're where we are. So I can't think of two people that I wanted to talk about this more than the two people that agreed to do this today. You are looking up at the top of two of my favorite experts in this area. They're practitioners, Eric Santos and Marjorie Colindres. Marjorie is a adjunct instructor at Loyola with me. She's a school social worker. She's contributed to our sites in lots of really interesting and cool ways. You can read a lot of her articles on schoolsocialwork.net. Eric Santos is a technology teacher and certified in lots of things tech, and he'll tell you all about himself as well. And today's topic is the one that I think a lot of us are thinking about. And I just want to remind you of the title is Supporting Our Kids from a Distance, Tools and Strategies to Provide SEL and SpEd Services. From tonight, we're going to certainly, again, keep following up on this. And as I get ready to stop talking, I'm going to move to the chat and ask everybody who wants to put questions and comments in the chat. I will catalog those and we will answer as many of them as we can before we end in about an hour. So if I could, I would like to give over to my friends, Marjorie and Eric. Thank you.
So just a real quick tech check-in. I want to make sure that everyone is able to see the slides and to hear us. So at the bottom of the screen, there should be a little reaction button that you can click that'll let you raise your hand. So if you want to just go ahead and raise that and let us know that you're able to hear us and to see the slides on the screen. That'll let us know that we're doing okay. And if you're having any trouble accessing anything, go ahead and type into the chat. And Dr. Kelly will be able to help us out getting you situated. All right, so it looks like a lot of yeses coming through. So I guess we will get started. So we're here to, Marjorie and I are here to present to you technology and SEL, supporting our kids from a distance, tools and strategies to provide SEL and SpEd services. So a little bit about our background before we get started and who we are. As Dr. Kelly mentioned, I'm a technology learning coach for Manheim Middle School, which is in Franklin Park and Melrose Park, just northwest suburb of Chicago in Illinois. If you can see my background, I've got my Chicago sports paraphernalia up there, so you know we're in Illinois, where we did just find out that we are doing e-learning for at least the rest of the month of April. I was a middle school science and STEM teacher for 11 years before becoming a technology coach, national board certified teacher. I'm also a Google certified trainer. And it's kind of interesting because I just finished my second master's in a online program that was ironically at a college, Dominican University, that's walking distance from my house. So for a while, I had to explain to my 6-year-old how daddy was in school, but all my school's on the computer. And even though I drive past this school every day, I don't actually go there, but I do go there. So it was a weird concept for him to try to comprehend. And little did I know, months later, he would be experiencing that himself as he's going to school online without actually going to school. So that's a little about me and my current situation. And I'll let Marjorie introduce herself.
So my name is Marjorie Colindres. I am a bilingual school social worker at Manheim Middle School. I work with Eric Santos. He's the technology coach at my school. I'm also a licensed clinical social worker at Alumni Counseling. In the fall, I teach school social work practice and policy at Loyola University. It's all online. And currently, I'm the conference assistant for the Illinois Association of School Social Workers. And then that's a picture of my family and I a few years ago. So a little bit about today's presentation. The tools and strategies that we'll be going over today will be a mixture of asynchronous and synchronous technology tools and strategies. Most of the tools that I'll be going over will be asynchronous. My school district is currently not allowing us, due to policy and regulations and laws that we have to abide by, we cannot provide telehealth directly to the students. So there are different methods that I've been using in order to connect with my students and making sure that they're receiving the right mental health support. My partner, Eric, will be doing a little bit of both throughout the whole presentation. And how can we use synchronous supports in order to meet with colleagues, be able to be compliant with IEPs, and making sure that we're providing the best supports for our students. So asynchronous meaning not at the same time, synchronous meaning at the same time. So Zoom is an example of synchronous type of technology use, and we're communicating all at the same time.
And as an example of asynchronous, that would be like posting a video for somebody to watch later, or maybe a social media where you're responding when whenever you happen to receive a message, you respond back, but it's not necessarily a real-time conversation. So with that said, a little bit about the agenda of solutions that we're going to share. So the 4 topics we'll cover are laws and ethics, staying connected, outreach, and resources. And we've got a lot of examples of technology resources we'll share. If it looks like a lot, it's because it kind of is. In this 1 hour, what we're going to do is just kind of go over some examples of how some of these options work. We're not going to get into a really detailed, step-by-step how-to tutorial. I don't think that the time allotted would do justice to any of these tools, but it's more kind of an overview of what you can expect are options that are out there, and things that you can maybe look into in more detail and decide what you want to use. And if this seems like a lot, it is going to go kind of fast. I hope nobody feels overwhelmed. Just know, the best thing to do in these situations is usually pick one thing that really stood out to you that you want to learn and get really good at and master, and just really apply that one really well before branching out and into everything that you see before you.
So I'll be going over laws and ethics. We won't go too much in depth like Eric mentioned. This is kind of a continuum of the webinar that did occur this past Saturday with Tanya. So there's some pieces of information that we would like to share with you. First, Eric is going to go over some state laws within the state of Illinois. I know we have other people from different states, some state and federal laws that we need to comply as we're using technology as a form of communicating with our students. Eric, I can't hear you.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. So one thing that I just want to mention up front, obviously I'm not a lawyer. This is not intended to be legal advice, but you do want to be aware of some of these issues before jumping right into technology. Just make sure you're aware of state law and your district policy on any of the tools that we're sharing. It's really easy to get on social media or talk to other teachers at other districts or even within your district and get excited about a new tool or a new opportunity. But it's really important to also know that schools are responsible for managing what students have access to and don't have access to and how those tools are used. And schools tend to have policies in place and paperwork signed that dictates what students can and can't use in terms of technology. So definitely make sure to talk to your tech folks and your admins about what tools are available, and if there are any that are not approved for student use. Related to that are a couple of pieces of legislation called SIPA and COPA. And again, without getting deep into those, I'll actually update that. Those should be a couple of links to the legislation itself. But basically, they say that schools are responsible for filtering student content that students see, and schools are responsible for getting the appropriate permission, especially for students under the age of 13, to use tech tools based on those company's privacy policies and terms of use. And so those are things to take into consideration before jumping in and using any kind of technology tool with students. Just make sure you've done your research on what your district and your state allow, and whether or not those tools are compliant with those federal laws. And then another issue that will come up and different schools will deal with in different ways are just involving recordings like this, like using Zoom. Obviously, we all want to get into close contact with our students at a time when we're feeling so separated from them. And video recordings are a great way to do that. Video chats are a great way. But there are some thorny issues involving, a student recording video live from their home, the ability of them to screen record or grab a cell phone and record their screen as everybody's including other students, are all on this video chat together. So those are things you want to kind of think through and talk out with your school district. So we're going to share, what's possible and what's out there. But before applying any of it, I definitely recommend chatting with your admin and your policymakers at your school.
So one piece of document that I want all of you to be familiar with is the National Association of Social Workers Technology PDF file that has been created. Once you have access to this Google slide, you'll be able to click on this link over here and be able to see the whole document. Eric, you can go ahead and click on the next slide. As I was preparing for using telehealth within a private setting as a licensed clinical social worker, I found out different pieces of tools and strategies that I think many school social workers do need it as well. Before we switched to using telehealth, there was a 15-hour training that I went through, and I did it through Renewed Revision Training. And it's a really good resource. It's you pay $150. At the end of each module, you take quizzes, and the information that they provide you is with ethical dilemmas that you might experience. One that Eric just mentioned is the fact that you can, for instance, a person can record you without you knowing. That's an ethical issue. An ethical dilemma that recently came up within private practice. I do family therapy, and sometimes one of the parents decided that he didn't want to receive telehealth because he's afraid that somehow his soon-to-be ex-wife is going to record the sessions, and that could be something that could breach confidentiality. So those are some dilemmas that sometimes come up that we may not think of, but people are genuinely concerned about. And why I like this training is because it goes over the pros and cons of doing teletherapy. So that way you're going into using this model, knowing the pros and cons, and then it gives you a little bit of understanding what would be a proper setting of you providing telehealth support. It's something as minuscule or as lighting, like what kind of lighting you need, what kind of headphone pieces might be helpful for you as you're providing support. Do you need any? And then I like that it connects it to the NASW Code of Ethics. And it also gives you scenarios, and the person who gives the treatment gives a lot of support along the way. Because a lot of our students are needing a lot of mental health support because of the current changes in some states, like the state of Illinois, insurance companies are trying to debate whether they should charge co-payments or not when people are receiving support through telehealth, since now there has been a switch from being in person to now providing support online. So as you're conducting referrals to families or students, be aware that some insurance companies are making changes with policies and co-payments. One of them in the state of Illinois is Blue Cross Blue Shield HMO. So with every strategy and tool that we'll go over today, we're going to connect it to CASO. So how is it related to self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness? We want to make sure that we're providing support to students at the micro, meso, and macro levels of a school building. So that way, all students are receiving the supports that are necessary. So as you know, coronavirus is not just something that's happening physically. It's triggering lots of different mental health issues, such as job security, decreased job security, social withdrawal, loneliness, financial insecurity, and fear of possibly losing a loved one, despair. And there has been a switch to our mindset from living to now survival. So a great piece of information that I found to be useful, it's actually on the right-hand side of the Google slide. If you click on you're going to actually have access to this Google slide eventually. When you click on this document over here, it goes over the different stages of grief and how people are dealing with it. And also, it's important for you as a clinician to be self-aware. Are you experiencing grief? And if you are, I'm sorry, I think there are other people talking. If you are experiencing grief, how can you help yourself? And being able to know the different stages and what is anticipatory grief. And once you're in the stage of acceptance yourself, I've noticed that you're more resilient and more willing to persevere and wanting to learn the different tools and strategies that are available in order to connect with your students through the use of technology. So I highly recommend the article that's listed on the right-hand side. Go ahead and click on the next slide. So make sure you do create a SMART goal. Today, we're going to focus on things that you can control. What kind of technology piece will you be using, how you will be using it, that's all within our realm, and making sure that you create a positive attitude about technology so that way you are successful. The number of information that we're going to go over is going to be numerous, so it's very important that you set specific goals. And like Eric said, it's best practice if you just focus on one or two things at a time, being able to master it and then move on to the next tool or strategy that might be helpful to you.
We'll start by talking about some tools that help you stay connected, which is obviously a really important theme right now. And Marjorie, we'll talk a little bit about Google Classroom and Class Dojo.
So Google Classroom, I use it in my school setting. I was already using it prior to this crisis happening, and how I was using it. Students who I see together, for example, on Mondays, I had a girls group who are mostly 7th graders. So I had created a Google Classroom, and how I typically used it was as a reminder, today is Monday, we meet at 8:10, come to my office, or I would share articles or YouTube videos that are relevant to their social and emotional goals. Now that this has happened, it has allowed me to connect with them that way by doing check-ins with them and providing them with articles and YouTube videos. So that way they are using coping strategies and they are using brain breaks. So they're not expending too much time on their devices. And so they are focusing on a little bit on exercising and being able to support themselves emotionally and making sure that their mental health is on check. So that's how I use Google Classroom. I've also used it for individualized students. For example, I have a student who has a one-on-one aid, and he needs to progress monitor how he's doing emotionally on a daily basis. So I've embedded within his Google Classroom a Google form where he checks in how he's doing on a daily basis. And that's how I'm able to progress monitor his goal. Now that we're not in school and I'm indirectly communicating with the student, I send reminders through Google Classroom. Don't forget to fill out your Google form. Tell me about your day. Tell me about what coping strategies you've been using. So that's a good way of communicating. Every time I post something on Google Classroom, it goes directly to his email. So that way he's able to connect with me. If you're new to Google Classroom, this video on the left-hand side will teach you how to get started. And then the video on the right-hand side will teach you what kind of information do you need to share with parents so they know how to use Google Classroom. Now, Eric is going to share with you a how to get started if you're not too familiar with Google Classroom.
So yeah, I'm just going to keep it really brief. Google Classroom, we obviously use it because we're a Google school. And Classroom, if you're not familiar, is a tool for organizing resources and kind of creating a virtual space. This is what my classroom screen looks like. Each of these is a separate classroom with separate students as a part of it. I use it for a variety of things, even though I myself don't have a classroom right now because I'm a technology coach. I have an after school program with students who run a weekly news show. We do a podcast, so I share that through a separate classroom. These are 2 courses taught by another teacher in our school that has joined me on to kind of help support her during this time. And then, I have a chess club classroom. So I can pick really any one of these. I'll take this one because this is by a teacher that I work with. And it's basically an online space where she can post announcements in the stream and she can post classwork in kind of a digital collaborative space right here. And without getting too deep into the technicalities, she can either post links to resources, for example, a Padlet where she wants students to post their comments, or she can create assignments. So for example, here's an assignment that she created. And as you can see, it was created using a Google Doc, and each student gets a copy, and she can she can automatically see from here who's turned it in, who it's been assigned to and hasn't worked on it, who she has graded and returned already. So it's a nice learning management system, but it can be used also for sharing resources, having a discussion. You can easily create a discussion question. So there's a lot of things you can use this for. And my biggest recommendation, especially if you're not a Google district, is just find out what your teachers are already using. One of the biggest tips I can recommend during this time as far as technology is try not to introduce too many new things. I'm sure all of you are just like I am, getting an email from literally every single company I've ever given my email address to, telling me how they're responding to the COVID crisis. And while that's commendable, it's kind of an overwhelming amount of information. So students are feeling the same. They're getting all kinds of communication in different channels from teachers, from parents, from the news. So if you can kind of latch on to what teachers are already using, especially if they're using Classroom already, I think it makes it just an easier transition and one less thing that they have to change in order to get the messages that you're sending out.
Another piece of advice too is that with Google Classroom, there could be multiple administrators or teachers within the Google Classroom. For example, if you are a school social worker and there are different self-contained and co-taught classroom, and a big portion of your caseload are in those classrooms, you can ask those teachers specifically, can you also make me an admin or a teacher within your Google Classroom? And that way I can share coping strategies or videos that I've made with your whole class. So that's another way for, if their teachers already using it, you can implement some of the tools and strategies that you already know and be able to connect with your students that way. So now on to Classdojo. I also worked in elementary school, and I worked with middle school and high school. From my experiences, Classdojo seems to be most responsive within elementary buildings. At the middle school level, it kind of depends on the cognitive ability of students. So in an elementary school setting, I know that a lot of teachers are already using it. And I know that some of my colleagues, what they've done have similarly to Google Classroom, they've just asked teachers, can you make me a second teacher onto your account? So that way I can post information and all students can receive the piece of information that I have. So that's another way that it can be used. There are 3 videos on this slide. If you're not familiar how to use Classdojo, this is a video on how to get started. If you want students to be able to connect and be able to message you, and for students to be able to create a portfolio of resources and strategies, this is a video that will teach you how to create a portfolio. And then the last video is how do you get connected to parents? So a cool feature about Classdojo is that it looks very similar to Twitter, and parents and families can see what's happening within the classroom. Obviously now we're not in the classrooms, we're not in our buildings, so you can post videos. For example, I teach yoga at my school, videos of me doing yoga and sharing it with my school community. So that way my students are also practicing some self-care and being able to exercise at home, because that's crucial for our mental health. So if you go to the next slide, Eric, I listed a Venn diagram, and you can decide based on the needs from your school what is most appropriate. Is it better to go and use Google Classroom, or is it better to use Class Dojo? What I like about Google Classroom is that it's appealing to all ages. I know that a lot of high school settings are using Schoology, which is very similar to Google Classroom as well. And you can easily create a Schoology account. And if you have a group of students who meet together, you can create a Schoology account for those groups of students and be able to share resources that way too. With Class Dojo, I do like that it does give you the feature of being able to message parents, kind of like a text feature, and you can connect with them immediately. And it's easy for parents, especially now that many of them are teaching at home and they're trying to figure out, how do I meet the needs of my kid, and how am I supposed to teach some of these classes and these courses? I don't recall fifth grade math. So that's a good way of communicating. And you can also, ask the teacher to make you an admin if a teacher is already using Class Dojo. So those are the pros and cons, and you can decide what works best for you in your school building. Eric, I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
A question that asked if Google Classroom is our approved platform at our district. Just to give you some insight into our district, we didn't officially have a platform. We allowed teachers to pick anything from our approved lists, but most middle school teachers chose Google Classroom, and that's where we were actually on the road to making that our formal learning management system. The elementary schools are using mostly Class Dojo or Seesaw, which I also saw someone mention in the chat as well. So yeah, again, do your best to find out what teachers are already using and see if you can maybe transition into something that students are comfortable with, and of course something that's approved by your district.
And if you have any questions on how you can get started, you can certainly email me at mcolind@luc.edu.
We'll talk a little bit about connecting virtually right now using Google Meet. So if this is something that you relate to a little bit, then you might be using Google Meet already. I know it's also very similar if you're using Zoom, but this is how, unfortunately, for the next month at least, we're going to get used to interacting with one another. And Google Meet, if you're not familiar with it, I'll just kind of pull up another window where I have it. Google Meet is a similar program to Zoom in which you can do live synchronous video chat. I will preface this by saying our district has not yet approved Google Meet. And the reason is they're still working out some issues where students would potentially be able to get into a video session that's already happened without the teacher. That's not the case everywhere. I think we've kind of had some technical issues on our end. But Google is very responsive to what's going on right now and has been rolling out new features and updating privacy and security regularly. So my recommendation, again, before jumping into this, is checking with your admin, checking with your tech department, making sure you've ironed out all issues of privacy and student confidentiality. But assuming that you're able to use this with students, or it is definitely something you can use with colleagues and coworkers, it's just as simple as going to meet.google.com. And then if it's enabled in your organization, which your tech department would have to enable, you can join, click join or start a meeting. And I'll just give it a name. I can give it any name I'd like. And it's kind of similar to Zoom. You've got this waiting room and you can turn on your mic and your camera or turn them off before going in. And then you can join the meeting. And anyone who's got this exact link can join that meeting as well. And it's pretty convenient because it pops up the link that you would need to share to anybody in order to join, and it even gives you a dial-in option. So if you've got maybe a parent or a student who doesn't have access to the internet or to a device, but they do have a phone, they can always dial in and join just via audio. This can be useful, obviously, in several different scenarios, but I've now got that copied and I can send that wherever I'd like, or I could just copy only the dial-in information. So it's just that easy to start a meet, and then ending it is just hanging up. So if you're using Google Meet, some considerations. Again, the privacy, safety, and legal concerns. So obviously, if you're asking students to broadcast live from their home, you want to make sure that you've cleared that with your school district. You want to make sure they've got permission to use those tech tools. Think about recording protocol. There is an option to record within Google Meet, and then any device nowadays has some built-in or can be accessed online tools for recording their screen. Not to mention a student at any time could just grab a cell phone and start recording what's going on their screen without anyone knowing. So just make sure you're clear on what the protocol is for recording sessions and that you've communicated that with students, and that you've thought about, how would you share links to students? How would you get them involved? And then if you do have disruptions, just like in a classroom, teachers have to plan ahead for what happens if a student becomes disruptive. How do I handle that? What if that doesn't work? Just be prepared for dealing with those kind of disruptions. And then of course, tech support. Like, what will it look like if you run into tech difficulties? Does someone in your district, help out with those things? Will they be on call? Will they know that this is going on and be available to you during this time? It might be good to let someone know, hey, I'm running a meeting online for the first time. Can you kind of be there to help out and walk me through this, or just be available if I need some help? And then of course, considering, making sure you're having consideration for students having devices. At my district, we send devices home, fourth grade and up, and we've worked with some local partners to try to make sure that all students have internet access. But definitely be aware of those issues in your school and with your students before diving right in. So a lot of this is here just to kind of show you a few visuals that you can refer back to later. Again, you can just go to meet.google.com like I did, and start a meeting, an impromptu meeting right on the spot, and get an immediate link created. And you can also use Google Calendar. So if you're familiar with using Calendar, anytime you create a new calendar item, there's a little option right there that says add conferencing. And if it's enabled in your organization, then you can just click that button and it'll immediately attach a Google Meet meeting to that calendar item. And that's useful if you're working with colleagues or with students who are familiar with Calendar. You can send them a calendar invitation and it will have the link attached to it. If you were to decide to set up a recurring meeting, perhaps you're going to check in with a student or meet with a group of teachers on or a group of other professionals on a specific day. Let's say every Friday at noon, we're going to meet. You can create a recurring meeting and that same link will be there. So it's easy for everybody to access. So two different ways to start a meeting. Again, if you're using Zoom or there's a couple others, WebEx, GoToMeeting, they're all going to run in a pretty similar way. But if you're a Google school, this is a great one to look into because it's integrated with everything you're using already. You do have a few fun options here. You can see all the people that are available to you. There's a chat room just like in Zoom, and you have the ability to change your layout to see everyone in the way that makes the most sense for you. There's also a built-in record meeting option. Again, that's something to talk with your tech department about in terms of legality and ethics, but it's got a lot of really good built-in tools. So some of the great things I mentioned: fast, easy to start a meeting quickly. You can schedule or do it on the spot. People can access it via the web. You can download the app on a mobile device or just dial in, and you can turn off your camera if everyone's not comfortable being on camera. Some of the things to be concerned about, I did mention that there's still some kinks in the privacy and the ability to keep a meeting limited to just the person who's running it being in there. So definitely something to look into with your technology department, and also thinking about screen recording. One quick tech thing that I do want to make sure I share. Right now, I'm sharing my screen, and any virtual meeting software that you use is going to prompt you with this prompt, and it's not always intuitive. So I just want to take a second to share with you what that means. When it asks you to share your screen, and it asks you, what do you want to share? It's going to ask you if you want to share your entire screen, and that would mean your entire desktop. So that means anything, any windows you have open, any programs you have open, your background, your files that are in the background, the name of your computer if that's posted up there. So just be aware that if you're sharing your screen, know that if you pick entire screen, everything's showing. So you definitely want to make sure everything's cleaned up in a way that you're comfortable sharing with others, as if they were looking right at your screen. However, if you pick window, it would share only what's in that application window, which means, for example, if you have Google Chrome open like I do right now, anything within Google Chrome will show, including all of the tabs. As you've seen, when I click on another tab, you see what I see. However, anything not in Chrome will be hidden from your audience. So this is a good option if you know everything you're going to be doing is going to be just in that Chrome window. Whereas this one, the entire screen on the left would be a better option if you've got to open multiple different windows and multiple different programs. So just a heads up on those two choices. I thought this was kind of a fun little hack. So if you did need to use a doc cam for anything, and this might apply more to teachers, but if you ever needed to show a document, it could be a little awkward to try and hold it up to your webcam and put it on the, the camera that's facing out of the top of your computer screen. You could always join a meeting from a cell phone and then kind of prop it up in such a way that you're sharing your screen from your cell phone and you're using the camera to capture what's on the table in front of you. I thought this was a pretty fun doc cam hack. Obviously, depending on how apocalyptic things get, cans of soup might be in high demand. So maybe you use some books or something else heavy to prop up that phone. But I thought this was a fun way to be able to share a document live while you're also chatting with somebody on your computer. Just a quick heads up, I won't go through all of these bullet points. It's all on the slide for you, but basically, it's always a good idea to have some meeting etiquette in place. So if you're doing this with students or even with colleagues, these are a list of things that are really, if you've done a lot of video conferencing before, these are kind of second nature to you. But just like in a classroom, you would want to set rules and norms and expectations and never assume anybody knows anything without talking to them first. I think it's a good idea to just kind of establish these up front so everyone's on the same page. So these are some options you can choose from. Of course, you can take this and create your own version, but I definitely think it's important to have etiquette set up ahead of time. And just a heads up, if there's anyone out there using Google Meet, I highly recommend these two Chrome extensions. Grid View, which you can click on the links in the presentation. Grid View allows you to see what I call Brady Bunch View, which is what Zoom has by default, where you can have everybody's picture up in one big grid. And then the nod reactions is a Chrome extension that allows you to have reactions kind of the way we do in Zoom, where you can raise your hand or have emoji reactions. And those are both Chrome extensions, so you would have to use Google Chrome and you'd have to install them first before using them in Meet.
Oh, I'm just watching this video thing.
So, oh, we got somebody who's got to hit mute, please. Awesome. So with that said, we'll move on to creating and sharing instructional videos. So everything that I just talked about with Google Meet is more what we call synchronous, but this is asynchronous. So if I'm not able to directly connect to students via video chat, how can I create and share instructional videos or, any kind of video that you think would be interesting for a student to see. And students, of course, can create these too if they have the tools available to them. So again, for the sake of time, I won't get deep into a lot of these, but I will share kind of an overview of what's out there for you to be able to create your own content and share it with students. I'll kind of start with the simplest and move towards the more complex. Online voice recorder is one of my favorites because it is free. It is simple. It doesn't require any login. And if you just need to record your voice, this is the way to go. So, this is something students could use to record music, or you can record, a music for students. You could record yourself explaining something. You could record, some kind of daily message to students. And it's just simply going to that site and you click the record button and it immediately starts recording. You'd probably have to click that little allow button that often pops up asking you to allow access to the mic. But once you do that, you can speak freely and it records your voice and it processes it immediately. You can trim the ends if needed and you can save it. And you've now got an MP3 file that you can download and you can post somewhere like Classdojo or Google Classroom. And you've got access to that. So online voice recorder, a simple option for just recording audio. Actually, if you wanted to click on this on your own time, there's an option within Google Slides that allows you to just insert audio. So if you have slides that you're sharing with somebody, you could actually insert the audio that you just downloaded directly onto the slide, and then they'd be able to hit that play button and listen to that audio on the spot, which I think is a great way to soup up your slides a little bit and make it so that you're live presenting them. By putting a short recording on each slide, you'd be able to provide a little more instruction. So again, I would just create audio here, download it, and then in slides, go to insert audio. Make sure that you've uploaded this to your drive. So you need the audio file in drive first and share it so anybody can access it, and then you can insert it on the slide.
And
To
sorry, and how I'm using that previous website that Eric just demonstrated, a lot of times I start group by doing some sort of mindfulness activity. So I've been recording myself and then posting it on their Google Classrooms. So that way the routine is still the same. I'm still keeping, that's how we start group. And so I'm doing that once a week. So that's another strategy that you can do. So that way the routines have not completely changed.
next,
Yeah.
the next one that I want to share. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, now you're fine. We couldn't hear you before.
Oh, gotcha. I don't know what's up with my mic. I'm borrowing a headset and it's a little iffy. So sorry about that. So recordscreen.io is the next one that I want to share, and this is similar to online audio recorder in that it is free, it is simple, it is fast, and it doesn't require install or login. It steps it up a little bit and allows you to record what's on your screen as well as recording video of yourself. So I can just go to recordscreen.io. Again, you do need to be in Google Chrome for this to work. Just like with the online voice recorder, I hit record. It allows me to either pop my camera up right here. Hey, there I am. Or just do my screen only. And I hit start. It asks me what I want to share. And it allows me to record what's on my screen while also recording my voice. I can click onto other tabs and it will record those as well. And when I'm done, I can hit stop and it saves a video for me. Sometimes when I hit that button, I lose the screen share in Zoom. Are you all able to still see the screen share of our slides?
I'm only seeing the video, like the video you just
Oh,
created.
okay, so then you are still seeing it. Good. Sometimes when I hit stop on the screen record, it stops the screen share within Zoom too. So glad that didn't happen. One of the downsides, this is not saved anywhere right now, so I have to download that video and save it. But once I've downloaded the video, I've got it. I can put it into Drive, I can put it into Classroom, I can email it out, however I'd like to share it. So a quick and easy option for recording your screen and video. And to build on that, Screencastify, a little more complex. I won't get deep into it because of time, but it's basically similar in that you can do screen recording. It's a little more complex in that you need to install it. It becomes a Chrome extension, so you would need to use it in Google Chrome again. And there's a little bit of a learning curve, but their tutorials and their walkthrough of the install just walks you through how to use it. It's a bit more integrated in that you can share it directly to your Drive, directly to Classroom, or even to YouTube. And it's got some on-screen drawing tools that you can use. So there's a little more involved in that, but if you're comfortable with with this kind of technology, this is usually the go-to for a lot of teachers and a lot of educators and just people in general. With that said, I would like to promote the idea of using YouTube as a medium for sharing videos. Again, especially if you're a Google district, Drive has been pretty overwhelmed with people uploading videos, and I've seen a lot of really long processing times for videos that we've been uploading in my district. Whereas YouTube it's streaming, and so parents don't have to worry about running into some of the issues. With Drive, they would oftentimes have to download the entire video and they're able to in order to see it. With YouTube, of course, they can stream it and it's accessible on any device. And regardless of their internet speed, they're likely to be able to watch it. The process of uploading something to YouTube once you've recorded a video is pretty simple. So it may seem like something that should be more complex than it is, but if you've got a Google account, you've probably got a YouTube account as well. So if you're a Google school, go to YouTube, talk to your tech department, of course, and see if you've got that and if it's okay to be using your account. But all you would do is basically go into your account, hit the plus button, and upload a video. These are three options that you wanted to set on the video, and they will walk you through each of these steps. But it's just that simple, and you upload it, and now it's available, and anyone can see your video that you share that link with. So I do recommend that as a great way to be able to post content to students regularly and connect with them.
So now we're going to go over a little bit about some outreach resources. Go ahead and click on the next slide. So what I'm using to connect with other professionals who are technology coaches or other school social workers has been through Twitter. If you don't have a Twitter account, I highly recommend it. And you also have to remember that you're a school social worker, not only for your students, but also for your colleagues as well. And because there have been sudden changes, we're all experiencing at one point or another some sort of grief at the time. And like last week, I reminded my colleagues, and I posted something on Twitter that said, "It's a beautiful day out, step outside and get some vitamin D. It will help with your mood." And I received some messages, and people are just saying, yeah, that's a good reminder. I've been watching the news and I'm just very concerned. I'm not sure how we're moving forward. And so those are ways to get connected, meeting other professionals in the field, making sure that you're working smarter, not necessarily harder, especially during this time of transition. And that way we are all exchanging ideas and helping each other to move forward, not only within your school building, but as a profession itself, and as a country, making sure that we're helping each other through these times of crisis. And also, I post regularly if I made some sort of tweak that I learned from Eric, and I tweak it into social emotional learning. I post that and that's available on Twitter. If you do have Twitter, definitely follow Eric as well. He posts on a daily basis technology tips that you should know, whether it's using Google Meets or anything related to Google and Google Suites. So it's a good way of connecting to other stakeholders within your community too. I know that a lot of our board members are curious as to how we're moving forward and how we're assisting families and various stakeholders within our communities. And this is a platform that I'm using to communicate some of that, especially since we're working from home. Next slide. So I've put together various apps. I know that some of you have children at home, so you're doing your job while also trying to do e-learning for your children, or you have other responsibilities as well. So I tried to compile various apps that I found them to be easy to use and feasible within our setting. Now, some of these apps you may feel comfortable using and others you may not. I do recommend that you look through your school policy when it comes to social media use, because you want to make sure you do maintain a respectful and professional boundaries within the area of social media use. So I recently did open a TikTok account, and I did it because I could make 1-minute videos and be able to connect with my students that way and be able to use music and subtitles and things that were easy for them to understand, convey. So that's an app that I recently started using that I think students do enjoy. But you have to be cautious as to who you're following and how students, if any students, are following you. So be cautious about that. Video Shop is another app that I do use. It's easy to upload to YouTube, and it's very friendly, user-friendly to use, so you won't feel as confused. And Cute Cut is another app that you can use. I did provide sample videos that I've already created, so you can refer to it just in case. And out of all these three, Video Shop, I think, is the best one, just because it has different filters and different, just more resources, and it's free. So just a little bit of information. And once you have access to the Google Slides, if you click on any of these words over here, it's directly linked to the app itself. So that way you can download it from your phone when you have access to the Google Slide. Next slide, please. So those are just samples, and you can look through them at your own time. Next slide, Eric. So one more, please. So now a little bit more SEL apps and resources. I've compiled apps that cover what CASO, the social emotional learning goals that we have for our students. So these are just a list of them that cover self-awareness, self-management, and responsible decision-making. All of them are free except for the Zones of Regulation app. So you know your community and you know your school district policy best. In my school district, if I want students to have a specific app downloaded within their iPads, there's a specific form that I need to fill out. It needs to go through approval process, and then the tech administrator then approves it or disapproves it. But in times like this, where we're trying to meet the needs of our students at distance learning, I believe that many administrators would be more open to looking into some of these apps and making sure students have access to them. Now, within my community, I know that lots of parents and students have smartphones. And I know that if I were to send, and I've already sent out emails to parents and let them know, these are the apps that may be useful for your child. Please download them. You can use them as brain breaks or for them to continue working on their coping skills, because mental health should be prioritized, especially during times like this. Just like how we brush our teeth twice or 3 times per day, just how we shower every single day, it's part of maintaining a mental health hygiene. So if you click to the next slide, Eric, please. These are apps that teach students about cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical behavioral therapy. The one at the bottom, while I've worked with middle school and high school students, a lot of times many of them do experience anxiety regarding topics related to school, whether it's schoolwork or the actual building. And because of that anxiety, a lot of them do experience insomnia. So I found this app to be very helpful to helping them identify what are the antecedents before falling asleep, what's causing you some sort of stress, what kind of irrational thought are you experiencing, how long are you sleeping. It's a great tool to be able to use with students who have those challenges. This motivation app inspires students with daily quotes and also teaches them how to create SMART goals. And then the top 3 are all have similar features, which is what is DBT and CBT. It gives them the ability to create journal entries and be able to progress monitor their feelings on a daily basis. So those are great tools and strategies that you can share with your students, especially if they have smartphones. Or if your school district can download those apps ahead of time, so then that way they can access them from their devices from home. Next slide. So very briefly, I also put together apps for students with an elementary or preschool level. Breathe Kid Emotions and Autism Emotions teaches kids about emotion identification. Some of them do provide social stories along the way. So these are great ways of teaching kids and being able for them to meet their social emotional goals. So again, you can click on the link and it takes you directly to the app, so you can download it. And once you have access to all of these slides, you can dive into some of these apps more closely. That's the general gist of our presentation. If you go to slide 43, which is the ones with all the Twitter accounts and follows, you can easily follow us. And if you have follow-up questions, we would be happy to answer any of them, either via Twitter or email. I shared my email through the Google chat earlier in this session. And on slide 44, Eric and I have put several blogs together. And if you go directly to the schoolsocialwork.net website, you'll be able to access all the blogs that we've written as well. So,
sorry, Marjorie. Just a quick thing on a couple of tips for you, because that was a lot of information. I always recommend to the teachers that I coach to just focus on your why. Remember why you wanted to use technology and what you were trying to accomplish. I think if anything, this crisis has helped us all kind of strip down the day-to-day task that we do down to what's the most essential thing that I need to accomplish with students, and start there and make that be the one thing that you keep simple. Pick one tool, one strategy that you say, I want to really try this and see how this works for connecting and supporting my students, and then try to work with what teachers are already doing, and definitely reach out to your network, which hopefully myself and Marjorie are now a part of as well. And when you need help, lean on others for that support.
So the last slide are just links and resources that you can share with your students if they're experiencing suicidal or depression or any other mental health concern at times when you're not available. So these are great resources for you to share. And I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I believe we have a couple of minutes to answer some questions.
We do, and I feel like I'm missing our kids, and I almost want to do what I used to do when I led groups. I want to do a round of applause for you. So if everybody where they are can be doing that. I used to do that when I led my SEL groups. So there are questions. There definitely are enough that we'll have more to dig into later. But there are some Google Classroom specific ones early on that I want to get into. And then there's an ethics question I think is important for us to just put on the table. And the first thing is, I want to get to that is, one person wrote, how would you recommend the best approach to get signed consents knowing that the district community you're in is 98% low SES and they have limited to no access of being able to send things in signed telehealth ways, right? To scan and sign, things like that. So this came up also in the webinar on Saturday, but I'm just curious what you both might think about that.
So if in some school districts, they have an app called Notability where you can sign from a PDF file. So some school districts have access to that. I don't know if Eric, you know another way. I know that in private practice, that has been an issue that has come up too. And what my supervisor told me is just accept what they said via email and upload their PDF email onto our document where we put all of their information, that they provided consent through email and that they had read the informed consent. So that way we were documenting it without having to print anything, and we're still being compliant to some extent.
Yeah.
Yeah, from a tech perspective, just off the top of my head, there's a few, there's DocuSign and there's DocHub and Cami, and there's a few document signing tools out there. Again, check with your tech department. A lot of them, though, are usable from any device, including cell phones, that's a big thing in our district. Is we not all of our parents have a device outside of the one being sent home that they can use to access things. So making things accessible via cell phone is huge for us. Believe it or not, I mean, I'm hearing from districts that are, for a similar situation involving instruction where they want to get home physical packets for students to work on, they're just dropping them in the mail to parents. So, if all else fails, there's always good old snail mail to send documents back and forth.
Yeah, I think that's really important to say. Like, we need to make a reasonable effort. We need to document the efforts we make. We need to, again, we're gonna want to stand on the best ethical guidance we have on informed consent. Several things in the chat just to let you both know. There's people are doing some verbal consent by phone and then sending a documentation note into their file. I think in a temporary way that could probably live, but you want to definitely get what Marjorie said, something that's more email or some sort of other way people confirm things. But we're also, talking about families that may or may not use email, have a smartphone, have internet access. Those things are all real. We are going to run out of time, so I want to get to some Google Classroom things that were very specific that Eric and Marjorie, if you could help with before we wind up. So I'm just going to read some of these. In Google Classroom, is there a way for students to only communicate to the social worker without other students seeing the comments if they want that privacy? Is that something that can be built into a Google Classroom?
Yes.
Okay. And that's something that they can kind of poke around on and work on and maybe reach out to you and reach out to their tech people?
So Eric, I know that for me personally, I know that students, if they want to message me directly, if they click on my name, it takes them directly to my email and they email me that way. So from Google Classroom, they click on my name and then it sends me an email, and that way we can have a private conversation.
Yes, that is one way to do it. There are some districts where student email is disabled, or students just don't have access to be able to use the email, even if they're using Google Apps. It's a little trickier, but there is a way to post a question and have students reply privately to that. And yes, that's one of those things to kind of poke around. And I will use this as an opportunity to just say, in general, with any of these tools, I highly recommend doing a lot of testing on your own first before using them. Get a colleague who's interested, work with somebody else who you can trust, and you can kind of create a sandbox, so to speak, of this tech tool and test it out, test all the functionality you're looking for before going live with students and assuming that that's working, especially when it comes to trying to post a private message. I do know when you post announcements or you post classwork, there is an option for who you want to post it to. By default, it goes to the entire class. But just like with the chat message in Zoom, you do have the option to post something specifically to a student, and then only that student would know that they're getting that and everyone else would not.
So in the last question before we wind up is, if you do create, like say Marjorie or other social workers on this call today, create like a group that's a Google Classroom, but it's basically like a social skills group or something like that, and you were to add parents to that, because you can do that in Classroom, they would be able to see all the kids in the group, right? Like is there a way to make it just they see their own kid, or that was something else that came up?
So it's kind of tricky. So the way parents are joined is by email, and they have a limited view. They would only, if you add a parent's email in, they would only get updates and notifications for their student. Now, on the flip side, some teachers recommend that their parents actually get their students' login information and log in as that student. In which case, again, they would only see things that were posted for that. They would only see that student's work. They couldn't go in and see any other student's work. But if the teacher posted like a generic announcement or a general, assignment or a material for the entire class, they would see that. But they wouldn't necessarily see any private communication between the teacher and other students.
Okay.
And
But
in
again,
that
something.
respect,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. In that respect, that's why I do like Classdojo a little bit more, because you can have that direct connection, and it looks like text messaging, and it's completely separate, like what parents can see, what students can see, and that confidentiality piece is key.
And I think that's something parents recognize. So we are out of time. I want to say maybe a few quick announcements, and just let everybody know that's still on with us today and stream with us. This is the beginning of a variety of ways we're going to reach out to you. We are going to be starting tomorrow meeting with people who are interested in leading kind of grade level panel webinars about how people are doing things at their grade level. We plan to do one on early childhood, one on elementary, one on middle and high school and alternative school. So stay tuned for that. That's going to not start this week, but the week after. We're also going to be on School Social Work Network doing live lunchtime chats. And I'm going to ask Marjorie and Eric to join us at some point to do some follow-up on the great stuff they gave us today. Finally, I just want to say this is an amazing gift that Marjorie and Eric have given us today, of their own expertise and time. And I'm so grateful, and I really hope, and they love what you've given them in the chat, both of you. We will follow up further, and otherwise, good night, everyone. Be well, and stay tuned for more. Thank you.
Thank you.